5 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defense DST units I look to get on the wire this week. The first one's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mentioned the Jaguars last week, and it was a mediocre ball game for them in a wet condition. They did have a pick six in this game here with this Jacksonville team, and right now they got a pretty good matchup here in Week 5 versus the Houston Texans, an offense that is challenged at times this season. So right here, Jacksonville, they play hard football. Had a tough loss, obviously, to the Philadelphia Eagles. But they're a team right now available in 88% of fantasy leagues. So the last few weeks here for them, Week 2 with the Chargers, 10 points allowed, a sack and into fumble recovery. And Week 4 at Philly, 29 points allowed, 2 sacks and a pick six. So right here, Week 5 versus Houston, I think they can make some plays. It's a division ball game. And even though they lost at Philly, they still competed. And this is what Doug Peterson's going to have this Jacksonville team do. Compete, get things going, and right here in a home game versus Houston, I think they could get a few things going is Jacksonville, and I think their defense is a decent add this week. The next one I looked at on the wire this week is the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans, they got a good matchup coming up, and that's why I got them pretty much as a 1 week add on the waiver wire, even though they had a pretty solid ball game in Week 4 at Indianapolis. So Week 5 here at the Commanders, I think this ball game could be in the low 20s for both these teams, where Tennessee can make a few plays and get to Carson Wentz, where this offensive line over there in Washington isn't good at all. So the last couple games here for Tennessee, Week 3 versus the Raiders, 22 points allowed, a sack and an into. In Week 4 at Indianapolis, they got to Matt Ryan a few times and caused some turnovers, 17 points allowed, 3 sacks, an interception, and 2 fumble recoveries. So right here is a 1 week add available in 91% of fantasy leagues here. I like the matchup in Week 5 at Washington. And over the last couple weeks here, Carson Wentz, he's been a crash test dummy, sacked 15 times in that time is Carson Wentz. So right here, he's been getting rushed a lot as Wentz. He's been eating the turf a lot. And I think Tennessee can make a few plays and are a decent pickup this week. The next defense, the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings, you thought they would have had a better of a ball game in the London ball game. Only 6 fantasy points in Week 4 versus the New Orleans Saints. But Week 5, they got a great matchup versus the Bears. Well, one of the worst offenses in the league, if not the worst offense. Justin Fields, I don't think he's the guy for this Bear team. They don't got really any weapons. Darnell Mooney, it's been a bad year for him so far. And Cole Kmet, he hasn't done much either so far this year. So this Minnesota team, we know they got some pass rushes with Zadarius Smith and Darnell Hunter. And right here, I think they go hunting in Week 5 here versus the Bears in a home game. They don't have to worry about conditions, where we saw a lot of bad weather ball games on the East Coast in Week 4. So right here in Week 5, it's a home game for this Viking team. They're looking to improve 4-1, and they got a great matchup versus this bad team. So right now, they're available in 59% of fantasy leagues, and they're definitely a DST I looked at this week. The next one's the Miami Dolphins. So right here, they might be the hottest pickup of the week here is this Miami team. What a great matchup with the Jets coming up in New York in Week 5. So right here, this Miami Dolphin team, we know they play stiff defense. We know they could get to the quarterback. And in Week 4 at Cincinnati, it was just a down ball game. Only 27 points allowed and only a sack. But right here, Week 5 at the Jets, a division ball game. Want to get back on track. And Zach Wilson's a young quarterback. I know looked decent in his season debut here after coming off the knee injury. But right now, it's going to be a tough one for him in Week 5 with this pass rush. And this Dolphin team, they want to get things going. And with the 10 days off, they got time to heal up a little bit here and game plan for this Jet team. So they're definitely a defense I'm big on this week, is this Miami team. And they're available right now in 78% of fantasy leagues. And the fifth and final DST defense I looked at this week's the Kansas City Chiefs. So this Chief team, I know they've had some shootouts this season, but they're a defense that still goes out there and plays tough football and can make a few plays. So the last few weeks here for them, Week 2 versus the Chargers, 24 points allowed, 2 sacks, including a 90-yard pick six to turn that ball game around and win. Week 3 in Indianapolis, 20 points allowed, 5 sacks, a fumble recovery. In Week 4 Tampa Bay, 31 points allowed, but they still had a sack and 2 fumble recoveries. So Week 5 here, division matchup versus the Raiders. I know this Raider offense, they've been pretty decent this season here, but I think they could get to Derek Carr a few times. And we could see this being a game in the low 20s to mid-20s, I believe, between these division rivals in the AFC West. So right now, it's a Monday Night Football game This Chief team rolling right now 3-1 with only one hiccup versus Indianapolis, coach, which was surprising. But right here in Week 5 versus the Raiders, I think their unit could be a decent ad this week. And they're available right now in 62% of fantasy leagues. That's a few DST defensive units I looked at on the waiver wire here for Week 5 of the fantasy football season.